Hello, good evening, welcome to my channel. My name is David Okun. Thank you everyone who have been watching my channel. I've been talking about the cost of living. This is because the cost of living has been a serious matter, and I also believe that the people of every country should be in a position to look after themselves. You should be looking after yourself, because mainly the governments of the world, in Europe, in America, in Africa, the Middle East, Asia, all these countries are going capitalistic, and the capitalism they are practicing is to the extreme right wing. Extreme right wing politics and the economy means there is liberalization of the market, and this means governments do not intervene to regulate the market. Once they don't do that, the marketeers, the multi-millionaires and multi-billionaires who own big assets, who run corporate empires across the globe, will do like they please. They have a lot of power to make wealth. They are culturally tuned in the market context to concentrate on creating wealth. They don't think of other things. You understand something about hypnotism? Their mind is being controlled by the system, and the system actually teaches them how to make money, the value of money and wealth, which is a good thing. Everybody, if you are actually whatever class you are, the upper, the middle, and the lower class of society, it is so important that you understand the value of wealth, to the extent that when you're suffering the cost of living crisis, if it is impacting on you in whatever way, it is probably, if you are affected adversely, it is because you are on low income in your work, in your employment, in your self-employment, especially self-employment, the small and medium businesses. The big corporations are rich organizations. Those who own them are actually multi-millionaires and multi-billionaires. These and their executives and chairmen, they do not suffer from the adverse effect of the cost of living. I've been saying this over and over. Please, thank you for those who have been subscribing to my channel. Thank you those who have been watching, sharing with family and friends, ringing a notification bell and making comments. Some of the comments have been fantastic. The feedback, positive ones, are warmly welcome. The objective ones are equally appreciated. Carry on doing that. We are a small project, but we are actually steady in we are looking at the cost of living now, because it is fundamental, it is extremely important, is the deciding factor economically across the globe. It's actually a sign of the time involving wealth and the way wealth is actually shared with among the peoples of the world. So this information is critical, and if you have time, please watch it. If you have time, learn it. You have to be a master of your knowledge. You have to manage your time, you manage your life, and if you have to take time, read as much as you can about every topic which you value, and also about the topic which you value. Become a student of life. Learn as much as you can, and take a break. Play, go to parties, visit friends, and give them gifts. If you're lucky, they give you gifts also, because it is your life. You need to look after your wealth and your health as well. Your wealth is managing your money, your income. It doesn't matter how little or how big it is. It is your duty to do budgeting, to minimize debts, and if you're in debt, try and negotiate with your creditor, and don't ignore your debt. If you do, then you're going to get into trouble. If you pay rent, make sure you're up to date with your rent arrears. and your council tax arrears or any kind of taxation you pay to the government, and whatever credit you have obtained maybe from private companies as a consumer or an investor, stay on top of that. If you're lucky, you can access advice and support from professionals. If that doesn't work, then you go online, learn by yourself to manage your debt, to manage your income, and manage your finances. And if you are a good saver, if you like saving your money, consider investing in whatever little you can. Become self-employed. It doesn't matter how little or how big it is. Do your best, because it is your life. Without money, you are not going to survive. It is a modern system of life. And also at the same time, I have been inviting viewers to look after their mental health, their emotional, their cultural, transformational process, experience. Think positively. Doesn't matter how things are bad, because thinking produces information. It is supposed learning, and with good materials in terms of knowledge, we bring changes. When we apply this, we plan our life. We understand what situation we are under. Do not ignore your life. Do not ignore any problem happening around you or near or far. Be an expert on solving problems. Plan, even if you write just 2 lines. Do not wait until you are actually an owner of a multi-million business. Your daily household income, be an expert on managing it and celebrate it. Be happy about what you do, because it's your life. You only live once. I see these things about your life to value it. A lot of people have lost hope. I have lost hope, but I have decided to regain hope. So I believe, should you? Because there are all sorts of possibilities involving the present, the future. The past is there to teach us what our best to conduct our present. We have succeeded developmentally in terms of our progress, and we have actually achieved advancement in technology, engineering, science. We currently, if you watch news, we are talking about artificial intelligence, we are talking about 3D printers. All these things are factors you should appreciate and celebrate, because it's there to support humanity. And cultural learning and cultural proficiency means simply that you value humanity first, and then all the other factors of life is valued accordingly. Value everything, but set your priority right and make sure you you understand the value of humanity first, and then other things. That is to prioritize, to plan your life so that you are actually culturally educated, so that you are socially astute and a positive contributor to society, and you become efficient solver of problems, including the cost of living. The cost of living is here to stay. That is why I have been talking about it for a long time. And if you watch this video, watch it in conjunction with the other videos. I've been actually linking the cost of living with the financial crisis of 2007. It's called the credit crunch. Everybody understands the credit crunch. It produced a global economic crisis. It also produced a state of affairs where the government produced policy of austerity, in which people depending on public services lost out, because the government suspended the spending on public sector, closing down most of the public sector across the globe, and therefore distorting and also perhaps reducing or eradicating the services. People on low income, medium income, working or working self-employed or working as employees suffer, and people who do not work, who live in developed countries with state benefit, also suffer. You need to understand this, so that, because if you are in a situation, your human instinct at least is to solve the problem. You solve the problem best if you understand it, And that's why I've labored to explain these things, and I've been doing it over and over going forward. And this channel is actually intended as a long-term project. And going forward, I'll be talking about different other topics. So I'm so excited, so should you. And it doesn't matter how bad the situation is. We're talking about this not to discourage anybody or to stress somebody. You can be stressed and still put a smile on your face and live on hope. So I'm going to look briefly on what happened in America, because what happened then was a watershed in terms of the timeline of economic development, and which led to extreme poverty on those who depend on the state. Capitalism now has gone right wing. Right wing means it's extreme in favor of the market economic system. Economic system now concentrates on creating wealth, and these wealth are also concentrated in the hands of the few and not in the hands of the many. That's why the majority, who fall between 90 to 95, 98% of the global population, are experiencing the cost of living. This is the case given the fewest of the few who actually form past 1%, 2% of the population, they do not experience the cost of living crisis. This information is important. If you live in a democracy in your country, share this material, share this information with your member of parliament. Tell them if they don't tell you. Be an advisor as a constituent member, as a citizen of a country, in a constituency of your MP. Teach your MP if your MP cannot teach you. Their function in their offices and all the resources they have is to actually give you accurate information about the state of the country, including the cost of living, what they are going to do about it. The current government, especially in America, in the Western world, in the developed world, they are actually withdrawing from supporting public sector. They are also saying, especially the extremists to the right, they are actually saying they don't want to be nanny states. Nanny states is implying that you are children if the state helps you. And I say they are wrong, because the state is helping people who need help, because the capitalism is unfair. It's an economic system. And if the government doesn't intervene to support people who need help, the majority, the 90% or even more, who need help, if the government actually abscond their responsibility, then people are going to die, literally. I'm not saying this to scare anyone, but I'm saying this so that you look after yourself. You try to get out of poverty. In the first place, in the second, once you're out of poverty, everybody is able, because you are a human being. You have everything you need in your life. The only thing you cannot afford is actually time, because you grow old, and we don't have medicine for old age. That's why when we grow old, we unfortunately we die. There's good news along the humanitarian front. Humans and human societies are now working scientifically, at least, to try and understand aging. I've said this in the other videos, please try and find them if you can. But I'm just saying this again. Pay attention. It doesn't matter how. Look, it sounds like fiction, like science fiction, but it's fact. Scientists are doing research now to try and slow down aging, which is a really nice prospect. And they have done experiments on insects, on other organisms, and they have proved that they have been able to extend the life of those creatures 3 times. If this is applied on the normal creatures like human beings, animals, they can live 3 times as long. And this, in the case of humans, we can live up to 300 years if it is slow. But if it is stopped, it means we potentially are not going to die of old age. Old age is the #1 killer of a human being. People don't actually realize this, but it is. It's probably the only source of death. I mean, it's like the surest death sentence on humans. I'm talking about hope, because if we see that we can live for something in the future. If we have time, then we have hope. Whether we have time or not, we don't know what the future holds, because we have to look after the present, learn from the past. I'm saying this over and over to encourage us, because I come into contact with people who suffer many things, not just the cost of living, but a lot of things. People are so stressed, people are so isolated, they're depressed, and talking to people, sometimes people just want you to listen to them. Counseling and all these are actually our capacity to produce resilience, and our resilience are actually the one to keep us going. So let us go back to the cost of living and the American experience in 2007 and 2008, when the government of America failed to give housing to people who need it in America. Instead of using the public infrastructure, the public economy, and all the other public systems to produce public housing, to provide public housing for people who need help. The majority of Americans who are actually poor poverty being explained being defined in terms of if you work for a living. If you work for a living, you are low income, middle income, but you are not a millionaire, you are not a multi-millionaire. These form more than 90% of the global population, not just in one country, but in every country. And this is why I'm trying to say this over, so that we get familiar with it as a family of my channel. And thank you once more. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, I will be so happy to know that you are actually supporting me in whichever way. Subscription is free, you don't really pay anything. You're subscribing for a YouTube channel. It takes seconds. If you are in a world where you struggle to get data, you may struggle to watch the videos, but clicking like, subscribing costs something, but very little in terms of data. So please, and in terms of time as well, because it takes seconds and it helps a lot. It helps the channel to grow. So pay attention to this. I'm so grateful for those who have been watching my video, who have been subscribing. We are on our way, and we are going to do great things. We are humans. We have the last say in how the matter goes, and we have to manage our worlds. And I'm so optimistic. We may suffer, we may also maybe die, but that's not the end, in my opinion, because a lot is happening now within the human systems. Scientifically, actually, there is also a prospect where if you die, because you see, our bodies which support life is the data. When you die, the data doesn't die. The data on your body, this is scientific. Leave a comment below if you think what I'm talking about is rubbish. Then we can talk about it. You can do a research. Everything you see, trees, flesh, is data. Even what I speak is a form of information. Is actually recorded in the form of magnetism. When we get the equipment, and I say when because I'm optimistic that scientists will achieve to produce an equipment, an instrument, a tool to retrieve data, information, even from when we die, from wherever we are buried. We can be brought back to life if the technology is there. Don't misquote me. This borders on science fiction, but it makes us feel happy. It actually engages us positively to know that humanity is about possibility, and that's at the core of my trying to produce this conversation. So let us look at the American economy, where the credit crunch of 2007 and 2008 started, and where it headed globally. It created a problem in America. It crushed the economies of the world, including the economy of America, and it actually is responsible for what is now the cost of living crisis in a fundamental way. Responsible in a fundamental way. There is something called boom. The boom, I don't know who created this terminology. Somebody somewhere talks of economic boom. It means it's actually swelling, it's growing very quickly. It booms. Economic boom means it's growing very rapidly. Economic growth is going. The pace, the rate of growth is quite astonishing. But it also collapses when there is turbulence within the system. So in the case of American incident, the crisis there, the economy boomed and collapsed. See, so not just an ordinary economy. There's something called shadow economy. Shadow economy is actually credit, because credit represents a value which doesn't exist. It's recorded as wealth. It is shadow wealth. If you talk about shadow, if the real things exist, the shadow also exists as part of the real thing. But Americans and the globe, because of the credit economic system, have now done the global economic participation in terms of shadows. So we talk of shadow banking system, which is actually a shadow banking system run by credit. So it boomed and bust, and it also collapsed. Collapsing is actually true. The boom bust. The boom always bust. So we look at the economy being destroyed, the markets literally being destroyed, and we examine this, we look at it, we look at the crisis, and we look at the evidence. We look at the risk, the worst performing mortgages. We look at how they are funded through shadow banking system, and we look at the state of competition within the economy, especially within which actually result from the system known as the shadow banking system, and the pressure it put on a more traditional institution, which actually lowers the underwriting standards and originate riskier loans. Riskier loans specifically refers to loan within the housing sector in America, which was actually given to people on low income, people who are poor, and this was done by the prompting of the government using policy and law to support the financial market, and using this instrument to promote providing public housing. And so this actually disturbed the housing market, the housing system, and this created a lot of problems in the government encouraged the private companies, the big corporation, financial institutions, to give money to people who otherwise would not be given money in terms of risk management, risk assessment, and risk management. So this is something I've been looking at. Watch this video and the others as well. So in a June 2008 speech, President and CEO of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, Timothy Geithner, who in 2009 became United States Secretary of the Treasury, placed significant blame for the freezing of credit market on a run on the entities or in the parallel banking system, also called the shadow banking system. Parallel, like I said, because it's shadowy, it mimics the real thing, but it is actually fake. This is the language I want to use because it's quick. You just explain this thing quickly. So the then president in 2008, in June 2008, in a speech, the then president and CEO of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, Timothy Geithner, he also became in 2009 the United States Secretary of the Treasury, and he placed a significant blame for the freezing of credit markets, because the credit market froze. It means actually we went into standstill. It wasn't actually moving. How can you even celebrate the idea of a shadow marketing system that shouldn't have actually been created in the first place? And I have been saying on this video that the shadow economics and marketing financial system should be closed. You don't need credit. You don't need to borrow. When you say a parallel system, a parallel banking system, parallel to the conventional system, which is actually using real wealth other than using credit, because credit is actually not real, it's shadowy. But these are actually developed into really complex integrated economic and financial system across the globe. You borrow money, buy food, credit card, which is a good thing, but we cannot make that actually the core of our activity economically and financially. And that's actually at the heart of the problem in terms of diagnostics, looking at this situation. And so these entities became critical to the credit markets underpinning the financial system, but were not subject to the same regulatory control. The government was not actually controlling the market, which it does not, on the basis that the market actually represents freedom. That's why we talk of free markets, free market economy. To promote creativity, to promote innovation, and assuming that marketeers, people who invest and manage our global economy, are actually, they are responsible, they know what they're doing, they're supposed to know what they're doing, but sometimes because of our society, I spoke of cultural economy, people behave badly because we are culturally bankrupted. I have been actually repeating this point over and over. This meant that the disruption in credit market would force them to engage in rapid deleveraging, selling their long-term assets at depressed prices. Deleveraging means stopping giving credit, and when supply is disrupted, prices also go down. When we talk depressed prices, long-term assets, so he described the significance of these entities in early 2007. Asset-backed commercial paper conduits in structured investment vehicles in both auction rate preferred securities, tender option bonds, and variable rate demand credit notes at a combined asset size of roughly 2.2 trillion. This is some of the information you can look from wherever sources you look, but it helps to back up what I said in the opening. Assets financed overnight in tri-party repo grew to 2.1 trillion. Assets held in hedge funds grew to roughly 1.8 trillion. Leave a comment below if you know terminologies like hedge funds. When everything you talk about hedge funds, you talk about the credit system and the assets which are actually involving the credit system. In comparison, the total assets of the top 5 bank holding companies in the United States at that point were just over 6 trillion, and total assets of the entire banking system were about 10 trillion US dollars. The combined effect of these factors was a financial system vulnerable to self-reinforcing asset prices and credit cycles. Economist Paul Krugman, laureate of the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economic Sciences, described the run on the shadow banking system as the core of what happened to cause the crisis. These are actually top technocrats who understand the system, but the simple, to repeat the point, the simple situation is that the heart of this problem was actually the credit system, which is private and trying to do public things. We refer to this lack of control as malign neglect and argue the regulation should have been imposed on all banking-like activity. Regulation was a factor indeed, but I think fundamentally the credit system should be looked at going forward, because we are looking at the technicalities involving running the economy, the finances, the global finances, which are actually being harmonized at the moment. If something happens in America, you should not ignore it, because it's going to happen in your country, including in Africa, without the ability to explain investor funds in exchange for most types of mortgage-backed securities or asset-backed commercial paper. Investment banks and other entities in the shadow banking system could not provide funds to mortgage firms and other corporations. This meant that nearly one-third of the USA lending mechanism was frozen and continued to be frozen into June 2009. According to the Brookings Institution, at that time, the traditional banking system did not have the capital to close this gap. It would take a number of years of strong profit to generate sufficient capital to support that additional lending volume. The authors also indicated that some forms of securitization were likely to vanish forever, having been an artifact of excessively loose credit conditions. While traditional banks raised their lending standard, it was the collapse of the shadow banking system that was the primary cause of the reduction in funds available for borrowing. So we talk about consistently. We have been talking about the shadow banking and also the traditional model. Traditional model is actually the real economic model, and the shadow one is actually what the name suggests, is a shadow of the real thing, which is really difficult to understand why governments and the financial economic institution to use. What is shadow? Is actually the fundamentals of what should have otherwise been real. The scrutinization market supported by the shadow banking system started to close down in spring of 2007, nearly shut down in the fall of 2008. More than a third of the private credit markets thus became unavailable as a source of funds. According to the Brookings Institute in June 2009, the traditional banking system did not have the capital to close this gap. It would take a number of years of strong profits to generate sufficient capital to support that additional lending volume, and some forms of securitization are likely to vanish forever, having been an artifact of excessively loose credit conditions. All these factors, now we are looking at commodity prices. Commodity is what you might, are the things you buy in the market, like food, energy, houses, so all those things, vehicles. Looking at 2000, commodities boom, global copper prices. We look at organizations like commodities like fertilizers, their prices, things like potassium chloride, phosphoride. These are actually commodities, things we use on a day-to-day basis, or sometimes actually at industrial basis. Triple super phosphate, urea. So we have all this information. You can actually look at it independently in a 2008 paper. Ricardo J. Caballero, Emmanuel Fari, and Pierce Olivier Gorinchal argued that the financial crisis was attributable to global assets scarcity, which led to large capital flows toward the United States and to the creation of asset bubbles that eventually burst. Analysts actually are trying to look at what has been happening. Caballero, Ferrari, and Gorinchal argue that the sharp rise in oil prices following the subprime crisis, nearly 100% in just a matter of months, and on the face of recessionary shocks, was the result of a speculative response to the financial crisis itself in an attempt to rebuild asset supply. These are actually some analysis provided by experts. That is, the global economy was subject to one shock with multiple implications rather than to two separate shocks, financial and oil. Because these systems are extremely big, they are very complex, and when the crisis happens, it gets out of control. Long-only commodity index funds became popular by one estimate. Investment increased from $9 billion in 2006 and $200 billion at the end of 2007, while commodity prices decreased 71%, which raised concern as to whether the index funds caused the commodity bubble. The empirical research has been mixed. So we're looking at systemic crisis of capitalism. Talk about capitalism in the other videos. We're looking at it here in a 1998 book. John McCarthy suggested that a financial crisis is a systemic crisis of capitalism itself. In his 1978 book, The Downfall of Capitalism and Communism, Ravi Batra suggests that growing inequality of financial capitalism produces speculative bubbles that burst and result in depression and major political changes. He also suggested that a demand gap related to different wage and productivity growth explained deficit and debt dynamics important to stock market development. John Bellamy Foster, a political economy analyst, editor of the Monthly Review, believed that the decrease in GDP growth rate since the early 1970s is due to increased market saturation. If the market saturated, it means it is congested, perhaps also messy. Marxian economics followers Andrew Kilman, Michael Roberts, and Guglielmo Cacciedi in the contradiction to the Monthly Review school represented by Foster, pointed to a capitalism long-term tendency of the rate of profit to fall as the underlying cause of prices generally. So these are actually academics, think tanks, thinkers who are now giving their views. From this point of view, the problem was the inability of capital to grow or accumulate at the sufficient areas, at sufficient rates through productive investment alone. Low rates of profit in productive sectors led to speculative investment in riskier assets where there was potential for greater return on investment. The speculative frenzy of the late 90s and 2000 was in this way a consequence of a rising organic composition of capital expressed through the fall in the rate of profit. According to Michael Roberts, the fall in the rate of profit eventually triggered the credit crunch of 2007 when the credit could no longer support profit. In 2005 book, in a 2005 book, The Battle for the Soul of Capitalism, John C. Bogle wrote that corporate America went astray largely because the power to managers went virtually unchecked by our gatekeepers for too long. Gatekeepers are actually governments or regulators, in other words, people who actually make sure everyone is behaving properly in a country. Echoing the central thesis of James Burnham's 1941 seminal book, The Managerial Revolution, Bogle cite issues including that managers capitalism replace owners capitalism, meaning management runs the firm for its benefits rather than for the shareholders, or variation on the principle agent problem. So you're talking about things like bonuses. The participant actors in the market actually are focused on maximizing their wealth through bonuses, because if you perform in certain ways, you make money, you get bonuses. So these are actually the you could say is actually an hygiene, hygiene situation or lack thereof within the market economic system, which is actually what we can think about. And the management of earnings mainly focus on share price rather than the creation of genuine value, and the failure of gatekeepers, including auditors, boards of directors, Wall Street analysts, and career politicians. When we talk of politicians, it is easy to understand, but other gatekeepers, including auditors, these are governors within the private sector and also within the public sector. Like I said in the other video, government is now a mixture of public and private. So such as boards of directors, this is an example of private governance. Wall Street analysts, these are actually think tanks, a corporation. So these are also government within the knowledge sector. In his book, The Big Move, Mark Roda, a former executive at the Swiss-based UBS bank, suggested that large-scale momentum or big move played a pivotal role in the financial crisis. Roda suggested that recent technological advances such as computer-driven trading programs, together with the increasingly interconnected nature of markets, has magnified the momentum effect. This has made the financial sector inherently unstable. Robert Rich attributed the economic downturn to the stagnation of wages in the United States, particularly those of the hourly workers, who comprise 80% of the workforce. But I talked previously about the lower earning individuals and groups and associated with poverty. Actually, poor people were allowed to borrow money to buy houses in America, and factors such as low pay is supposed to be a government priority, also prerogative in terms of regulating the economy, especially the private sector. But the government cannot actually regulate the economy unless it is financing the public sector, whether through public service or through public economy or private economy. So the problem of capitalism today is that people who advocate capitalism is now ignoring the public sector equivalence of the same economic system. Public sector is supposed to be funded by the government, and if you give funds, whether to public or private institutions, to spend public money, it is best to regulate them, to make sure they're spending it in the right way. But also, revenue funding is now disappearing almost in modern economy. Every time the government gives public money to private business, especially big corporations, these big corporations give money to, they actually allocate these monies to capital investment and infrastructure investment. Economist Alicia McKay Morgan Bonald argued that the financial crisis and the response to it revealed a crisis of ideas in mainstream economics and within the economics profession, and call for a shaping of both the economy and the economic theory and the economics profession. Let's look at wrong banking model, resilience of credit unions. A report by the International Labour Organization concluded that cooperative banking institutions were less likely to fail than their competitors during the crisis. The cooperative banking sector, a 20% market share of the European banking sector, but accounted for only 7% of the write-downs and losses between the third quarter of 2007 and first quarter of 2011. In 2008, in the United States of America, the rate of commercial bank failures was almost triple of that of credit unions and almost 5 times the credit union rate in 2010. Credit unions increased their lending to small and medium-sized businesses while overall lending to those businesses decreased. Let us look at economists who predicted the crisis. So this crisis didn't come out of the blue. Economists, particularly followers of mainstream economics, mostly failed to predict the crisis. The Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania Online Business Journal examined why economists failed to predict a major global financial crisis and conducted that economists and concluded that economists used mathematical models that failed to account for the critical roles that banks and other financial institutions, as opposed to producers and consumers of goods and services, play a major role. So many asset managers continue to invest client funds in overpriced and under-yielding investments to the detriment of their clients, so they could maintain their assets under management. They supported this choice with a plausible deniability of the risk associated with subprime-based credit assets, because the loss experience with early vintages of subprime loans was so low. Despite the dominance of the above formula, there are documented attempts of the financial industry occurring before the crisis to address the formula limitation, specifically the lack of dependence dynamics and the poor representation of extreme events. The volume Credit Correlation Life After Coppola, published in 2007 by World Scientific, summarizes a 2007 conference held by Merrill Lynch in London, where several practitioners attempted to propose models rectifying some of the Coppola limitations. You can see some of these materials, such as written by Donnelly and M. Brecht, and the book by Drigo Pallavicini and Torresetti that reports relevant warnings and research on CDOs appeared in 2007. Let us look at the boom and the collapse of the shadow banking system. Let us look also at securitization of markets, which were actually impaired during the crisis. There is strong evidence that the worst performed mortgages were funded. The riskiest worst performing mortgages were funded during the shadow banking system, and that competition from the shadow banking system may have pressured more traditional institutions to lower their underwriting standard and originate riskier loans. In a June 2008 speech, President and CEO of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, Timothy Geithner, who in 2009 became United States Secretary of the Treasury, placed significant blame for the freezing of credit markets on a run on the entities in the parallel banking system, also called the shadow banking system. These entities became critical to the credit markets underpinning the financial system, but were not subject to same regulatory control. Further, these entities were vulnerable because of asset-liability mismatch, meaning that they borrowed short-term in liquid market to purchase long-term illiquid and risky assets. This meant that disruptions in credit markets would force them to engage in rapid developing, deleveraging, selling their long-term assets at depressed prices. He described the significance of this entity in early 2007 asset-backed commercial paper conduits in structured investment vehicles in auction rate preferred securities, tendered option bonds and variable rate demand notes at a combined asset size of roughly 2.2 trillion. Assets financed overnight in tri-party repo grew to 2.5 trillion. Assets held in hedge funds grew to roughly 1.8 trillion. The combined balance sheet of the 5 largest investment banks totaled $4 trillion. In comparison, the total assets of the top 5 bank holding companies in the United States at that point were just over 6 trillion, and the total assets of the entire banking system was about 10 trillion. The combined effect of these factors was a financial system vulnerable of self-reinforcing asset price and credit cycles. Economist Paul Krugman, laureate of the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences, described the run on the shadow banking system as the core of what happened to cause the crisis. He referred to this lack of control as malign neglect and argued that regulation should have been imposed on all banking-like activity. Without the ability to obtain investor funds in exchange for most types of mortgage-backed security or asset-backed commercial paper, investment banks and other entities in the shadow banking system could not provide funds to mortgage firms and other corporations. This meant that nearly 1/3 of the U.S. lending mechanism was frozen and continued to be frozen into June 2009. According to the Brookings Institute, at that time, the traditional banking system did not have the capital to close this gap. It would take a number of years of strong profit to generate sufficient capital to support that additional lending volume. The authors also indicate that the forms of securitization were likely to vanish forever, having been an artifact of excessively loose credit conditions. While traditional banks raised their lending standards, it was the collapse of the shadow banking system that was the primary cause of the reduction in funds available for borrowing. When you talk of borrowing, you talk about credit system, you talk about shadow economy, the same thing, and then solving problems by creating more shadows seem to be a very clear, form, predicament itself, but also a suggestion. The securitization market supported by the shadow banking system started to close down in the spring of 2007 and nearly shut down in the fall of 2008. More than 1/3 of the private credit market thus became unavailable as a source of funds. According to the Brookings Institute, in June 2009, the traditional banking system did not have the capital to close this gap, and it would take a number of years of strong profits to generate sufficient capital to support that additional lending volume, and some forms of securitization are likely to vanish forever, having been an artifact of excessively loose credit conditions. We are going to look at commodity prices in fair more detail. Main article 2000, commodity boom, and global copper prices, fertilizer prices. I think we have been here before. And I think we're going ahead a little bit. We'll look about systemic crisis of capitalism, and we already looked at that. And we're moving forward through the material. So what we looked at capitalism as an economic system. In his book, The Battle for the Soul of Capitalism, John J. Bogle wrote that corporate America went astray largely because the power of managers went virtually unchecked by gatekeepers far too long. We looked at that already, and these are some of the opinions of experts. I think we went back with a bit. In his book, The Big Mo, Mark Rodia, former executive of the Swiss-based UBS Bank, suggested that large-scale momentum, or the Big Mo, played a pivotal role in the financial crisis. So Rodia suggested that recent technological advances such as computer-driven trading programs, together with the increasingly interconnected nature of markets, has magnified the momentum effect. This has made the financial sector inherently unstable. Robert Rich attributed the economic downturn to the stagnation of wages in the United States, particularly those of the hourly workers who comprise 80% of the workers. This stagnation forced the population to borrow more, to meet the cost of living. Economists Lisa McKay and Magan John Olds argue that the financial crisis and the response to it reveal a crisis of ideas in mainstream economics and within the economics profession, and call for a reshaping of both the economic theory, and the economics profession. Wrong banking models, resilience and credit unions. A report by the International Labour Organization concluded that the corporate banking institutions were less likely to fail than their competitors during the crisis. The cooperative banking sector had 20% market share of the European banking sector, but accounted for only 7% of all the write-downs and losses between the third quarter of 2007 and first quarter of 2011. In 2008, in the US, the rate of commercial bank failure was almost triple that credit union, and almost 5 times the credit union rate of 2010. Credit unions increased their lending to small and medium-sized businesses, while overall lending to these businesses decreased. Economists who predicted the crisis, economists, particularly followers of mainstream economics, mostly failed to predict the crisis. The Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania online business journal examined why economists fail to predict major global financial crises, and concluded that economists use mathematical models that fail to account for the critical roles that banks and other financial institutions, as opposed to producers and consumers of goods and services, play in the economy. Several followers of heterodox economics predicted the crisis with varying arguments. Berg Bessemer credits 12 economists with predicting the crisis, being Dean Baker, US, Wayne Godley, UK, Fred Allison, UK, Michael Hudson, US, Eric Jensen, US, Steve Keen, Australia, Jacob Brochner, Medicine and Jens, Scarja Sojen, Denmark, Matt Jones, US, and these are some of the people who actually try to predict or fail to predict the financial crisis. And Sheila, the founder of the Case-Shiller Index that measures home prices, wrote an article a year before the collapse of Lehman Brothers in which he predicted that slowing U.S. housing market would cause the housing bubble to burst, leading to financial collapse. Peter Schiff regularly appeared on television in the years before the crisis and warned of the impending real estate collapse. There were other economies that did warn of the impending crisis. The former governor of the Reserve Bank of India, Raghuram Rajan, predicted the crisis in 2005 when he became chief economist at the International Monetary Fund. In 2005, at the celebration honoring Alan Greenspan, who was about to retire as chairman of the U.S. Federal Reserve, Rajan delivered a controversial paper that was critical of the financial sector. In that paper, Rajan argued that disaster might loom. Rajan argued that financial sector managers were encouraging to take risks that generate severe adverse consequences with small probability, but in return offer generous compensation that rates generous compensation the rest of the time. These risks are known as tail risks. But perhaps the most important concern is whether banks will be able to provide liquidity to financial markets so that if the tail risk does materialize, financial position can be unwound and losses allocated so that the consequences to the real economy are minimized. Stock trader and financial risk engineer Nassim Nicholas Taleb, author of the 2007 book The Black Swan, spent years warning against the breakdown of the banking system, in particular the economy in general, owing to their use of and resilience on bird risk models and resilience on forecasting, and frame the problem as part of the robustness and fragility. He also took action against the establishment view by making a big financial bet on banking stocks in making a fortune from the crisis. They didn't listen, so I took their money. He says. According to David Brooks from the New York Times, Taleb not only as an explanation for what's happening, he saw it coming. Popular articles published in the mass media have led the general public to believe that the majority of economists have failed in their obligation to predict the financial crisis. For example, an article in the New York Times noted that economist Nouriel Roubini warned of such crisis as early as September 2006 and stated that the profession of economics is bad at predicting recession. According to The Guardian, Roubini was ridiculed for predicting a collapse of the housing market and worldwide recession, while the New York Times labeled him Dr. Doom. In a 2012 article in the journal Japan and the World Economy, Andrew K. Ross and Mark M. Siegel used a multiple indicator, multiple cause mimic model on a cross-section of 107 countries to evaluate potential causes of the 2008 crisis. The authors examined various economic indicators, ignoring contagion effects across countries. The authors concluded we included over 6 potential causes of this crisis, covering such categories as financial system, policies and conditions, asset prices, appreciation in real estate and equity markets, international imbalances, and foreign reserve adequacy, macroeconomic policies, and in institutional and geographical features. Despite the fact that we use wide number of possible causes in flexible statistical framework, we are unable to link most of the commonly cited causes of the crisis to its incidence across countries. This negative finding in the cross-section makes us skeptical of the accuracy of early warning system of political crisis, which must also predict their timing. The Austrian school regarded the crisis as a vindication of a classic example of a predictable credit bubble caused by laxity in monetary supply. So different experts say different things, but the fundamentals for the 2007-2008 economic and financial crisis in America rested on the fact that the government failed in its public policy to provide public services of housing to the majority of the American people. It chose wrongly. It produced a disastrous kind of judgment and policy, which resulted in the government inducing or actually instructing or actually working with the private sector in America, the financial industry, credit infrastructure in America to actually provide loans, with actually credit to buy houses to people who are actually not credit worthy. Their integrity, they were allowed to borrow money when actually within standard practice, even within the credit economy, they were not actually well suited to borrow money. But I also say that the problem with the overall economy, global economy, is actually the credit system. It should be either used very limited, very sparingly, but it should not because now it's actually the main mode of operation, operating the financial system, the economic system. This is actually taking time from actually it's a practice and actually approach which is going to create a lot of problems, including cost of living crisis. We have talked about this, and I'm actually pleased to say we are almost at the end of this material. So the next video, watch out for it, probably hopefully sooner rather than later. Subscribe to this channel and share with friends. Like if you like it, also like if you don't like it. It's not going to kill you, but leave a comment, particularly if you think you have an opinion, or if there's something you can add or talk about. Engage, and thank you. Bye. See you in the next one.